Well, hello there, Sully here. Welcome to Transitions, my YouTube channel. If this is your first time here, I would respectfully request of you to subscribe to my channel and to like and share these videos, and feel free to leave comments. Well, no likely you've seen by the title of this video that I'm going to take a little bit of a literary bent. You know, back when I was on the road, I didn't always have a lot of time to read. I was pretty busy, especially on my last job pulling tankers, and I was home a lot more often too, but usually just long enough to get some sleep. Face it, if you're driving a truck, you gotta keep running. You're not making money if the wheels aren't turning, right? All you drivers out there can relate to that. The job I had before tankers, when I was with Atkinson Freight Lines, I guess I had enough time to do some reading, and I usually had a book with me. And my interests were varied. But the first book I ever read, real book that I ever read, it was when I was in the second grade. It was Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Now, that book is considered the first great American novel. I didn't understand that when I was 7 years old. I just thought it was a pretty good book for a 7-year-old to read. I didn't understand the way it was written, which was totally in the vernacular of a young boy, basically illiterate, and seeking adventures along the Mississippi River. Now, I never got to read anything by Jane Austen until maybe I was in my 30s. Because, you know, to me they were always the girly stories, right? But both Mark Twain and Jane Austen are pretty pleasant reads. Now, on the other hand, I have seen just about every Three Stooges short ever made. Now, as far as Mark Twain and Jane Austen, Twain really didn't have a whole lot of use for Jane Austen. He was sailing on a trip one time to Europe, and he wrote a letter to a friend back home, and he was really upset about the dearth of volumes on the ship's library, and this is a quote of his: "The library contains none of the works of Jane Austen." This alone was suggested as a good library, but then again, the same could be said about a library which contained no books. Well, my guess is that Twain just didn't get her jokes. You know, he once threatened anybody who found Jane Austen's work humorous to exhume her remains and beat them over the head with her shin bone. But you don't know Jane Austen without you've read the Jane Austen Handbook. That book was got down on paper by Margaret C. Sullivan. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, Margaret C. Sullivan just happens to be my kid sister. And I know some of her fans won't like the fact that I'm talking about a woman who's about to turn 56. Oops, sorry, Mags! She's going to be 56 in Monday, and yet referred to as my kid sister. Well, she always was my little kid sister, and I'm the only big brother she has left now. Now, it seemed to me that Austen's typical stories were about some poor girl who aspired to rise above her station by marrying a rich guy. Now, Maggie wrote in that book that, you know, the way that maybe a girl who was living in the 21st century might understand what that was like. For instance, she explains Sense and Sensibility pretty well. As a girl rendered destitute and dowerless by the death of her father, but she had two suitors, a dashing and honorable military man, and the other one was a rake. And I guess it was her half-brother and his wife rationalized how she and her sisters and mother were to be treated. And their father commanded that they should be provided for, although she fell in love with the cad. In the end, she did marry the right guy, the military gentleman. Now, my sister has written some fanfics, and One was sort of a novella that she wrote originally as an online novel. It was called There Must Be Murder. It was a fanfic sequel to Northanger Abbey, and it took me about all of an afternoon to finish it, a real page-turner. And the hero of the story is a rather large Newfoundland named MacGuffin. Now, it always seemed to me that Jane Austen was pretty good at making fun of rich twits. Well, why should this appeal to me? Well, I'll tell you. When I was a kid, I just could not get enough of the Three Stooges. And now, as a retired senior citizen, I still can't get enough of the Three Stooges. So let's talk about the Three Stooges. Moses Horowitz, a.k.a. Mo Howard, he was smart enough to realize that there was depression going on. And along with his brothers Samuel and Jerome, better known as Shemp and Curly, they came from a prosperous family. They were in the real estate and insurance business. And yet, Shemp and Mo got into show business with a partner named Ted Healy. They were Ted Healy's Stooges. And while they were appearing in the vaudeville circuit, they ran across a fellow who did a comedy act with his wife, a man who was trained classically in the violin named Louis Feinberg, who was from right here in Philadelphia. We know Louis Feinberg better as Larry Fine. Now, Mo and his brothers, along with Larry, they made show business history. They broke away from Healy, went out on their own. Shemp actually left the troupe and started making movies in Hollywood, while Curly, Mo, and Larry hit the vaudeville circuit until it was time for them to get a job at Columbia Studios. And like a lot of show business families, you might think that their parents were disappointed because the three brothers went into show business and the other three brothers went into real estate and insurance. But as a matter of fact, the senior, the father of the Howard brothers, actually appeared in one of their shorts. It was called Disorder in the Court. He was an extra. But Mo really understood about making fun of the rich folk because there was a depression going on, and a lot of people felt pretty bad about not having any money, so they would scrape together, you know, the 25 cents or whatever it cost to get in the theater to see the movie, and they would be treated to a short 20-minute long feature film. Not a feature film, a 20-minute short. Mo Howard understood that the way to get poor folks to like you is to make fun of rich folks. And that seemed to be the crux of Three Stooges comedies, making fun of the rich. Now, I did ask my sister one time if Jane Austen, say, lived in the early 20th century, she went to Hollywood to work instead of staying in England, do you think she would have written for the screen? I mean, I really think that Jane Austen would have been killer writing for the Three Stooges. And Maggie said that Austen would have been right at home writing for the movies. She was, in fact, a fan of slapstick. Some of her juvenilia work pretty much evidenced that. So that got me thinking. Picture you will. The Three Stooges, Mo, Larry, and Curly. They arrive on the job, and Mo sizes up the situation. And now he has to send Curly to go shut off the water. Okay, knucklehead, off you go. Run upstairs and shut off the water. I have to do everything myself. As Curly departs to shut off the water, Mo addresses Larry. Porcupine, be a good chap. Run out to the truck and fetch the tools. The tools? Asks Larry. My dear Mo, to which tools are you referring? Which tools? Says Mo. Why, my dear chap, the very tools we have used these past 20 years. Ah, says Larry. Those tools. Then I got to thinking that Mark Twain could have written the same thing. Twain was not a fan of slapstick. Twain wrote of humor in unusual situations. One of my favorite short stories of his was the £1,000,000 banknote. An American, a stockbroker, stock clerk, whatever, he was sailing on San Francisco Bay when a storm sweeps him out to sea. He's rescued and put to work on a British ship, and he finds himself one day deposited in London with only $1 in his pocket. The fella is ragged and raggedy, and two rich gentlemen spot him. And these two rich brothers, they've wagered as to whether a beggar on the streets of London who was given temporary possession of a banknote in the amount of £1,000,000 could survive or not. Rich gentleman, £1,000,000. A beggar. This sounds vaguely familiar. Young man, if I gave you $1 and your father gave you $1, how much money would you have? $1. Young man, you don't know your arithmetic. You don't know my father. I think Jane Austen would have gotten that one. So, don't be a knucklehead. Subscribe to my channel. Like and share this video. For transitions, this is Sully, the retired tanker yanker with my life after trucking. Stay safe and happy travels.